Yes, folks, using Greta Thunberg and other children to front the climate change propaganda is nothing less than child abuse. But first, I have an important announcement and request to make. I have just started a BitTube channel as a backup to this channel because of free speech issues. Now, I've put a link to my BitTube channel in the description below and would appreciate it if you guys could get over there and subscribe to it to help get it started. Anyway, back to the story. You may have noticed recently that thousands of children around the world have been exploited by climate change activists, just like this.
They are young, angry, and they say the need for action is urgent.
We don't have much time left. We have until 2030 to do something fundamental here.
An estimated 250,000 people flooded Lower Manhattan today, among them Canadian Calvin Yang.
I am genuinely scared that my future will be impacted by climate change and that millions of us will be impacted by climate change.
Many students here talk about fear.
Yeah, and who's causing that fear? Who's causing that child abuse? Well, to answer that question, you need look no further than left-wing teachers, left-wing media, and irresponsible climate change activists.
15-year-old Mark Burt says his teacher recently asked their class how many students thought the world would be unlivable before they got to college.
Most of our peers raise their hands because all of that's happening in our world.
No, nothing's happening in our world. You've just been brainwashed.
Concern for the future is fueling worldwide protests from South Africa to Australia to the United Kingdom. In a moment, many hope is a global tipping point.
The students here have three key demands: end dependence on fossil fuels, protect communities on the front lines of climate change, and punish the polluters.
They took that message right to the heart of Wall Street today, all of this inspired by 16-year-old Swedish activist Greta Thunberg.
So who exactly is pulling Greta's strings? Well, there's your answer, folks. The UN.
Greta, your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago. And in the intervening time, you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe, demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school.
Yes, you should be back in school. So why aren't your parents listening to you?
On the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your
No, your parents and climate change activists have done that.
empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Oh, that's sad, folks. This girl has really been damaged. Now to what's really going on.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Millions of school children across America, and in fact around the world, skipped school today. They weren't playing hooky. They were instead participating in a coordinated left-wing political protest. It was called Climate Strike. So naturally, MSNBC was there to cheer them on.
New York City is the home base for these protests. School officials, public school officials, are allowing nearly 1 million students to cut classes.
And who's paying for that? The taxpayer is.
Some of the signs, by the way, that I've seen so far for this rally are just absolutely fantastic.
Look, I am not in favor of encouraging people to skip class, but if there's a cause that isn't important, this is it. So good on you for going out there and telling people what really matters. Congratulations to you and those like you around the world.
Congratulations on skipping school. Throughout the day, news anchors assured their viewers that the strike was in fact being led by the kids. They were lying, of course. Like all activist movements, the climate strike was organized by cynical adults.
Of course it was.
Adults hoping to exploit children for political purposes, obviously. The other lie you heard today is that the strike was about the environment. It was not about the environment. The main goal of the protesters in this country, for example, was to implement Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. You'll remember from just a few months ago that the Green New Deal is not about the environment. In fact, Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff conceded as much. We're quoting now, "We really think of it as a how do you change the entire economy thing," end quote. But that shouldn't surprise you. The environmental movement itself has all but given up on the environment. Don't believe it? Look around. Is our country cleaner than it was? No. It's dirtier and it's more crowded, and it gets more of both of those things every year. The left doesn't care. They're cheering it on. Why? Because they want power.
Yes, and that's exactly what's going on here, folks. Power.
And in climate change, they found an emergency big enough to justify grabbing more power. In fact,
yes. Now, if they can scare enough people, people will naturally look to the government for answers. In other words, big government, power.
Taking control of everything. Don't believe it? Check out the manifesto of Youth Climate Strike. That's one of the groups leading today's strike. The document calls for, among other things, state-owned banks, single-payer health care, affordable housing, expanded rights for sexual minorities, etc. Now, you may agree with those political goals or you may disagree. But what do they have to do with the environment? Obviously, nothing. But whatever, full speed ahead. Bernie Sanders, among others, is now demanding that the United States begin admitting what he calls climate refugees into our country, maybe in your neighborhood. That would include everyone south of Miami or north of Buenos Aires. All of them now have a right to move here because climate. So what are the chances of something like that passing Congress, you ask? Well, right around zero. Congress will never pass a law allowing that. And so that means in order to get what they want, progressives will have to bypass Congress, not to mention voters themselves. And they'd like to do that. Watch as Colorado Senator Michael Bennet explains that the main thing in the way of his climate agenda is, yes, democracy.
I think this is a test that's not well understood by some of the candidates in the race and has not been well debated, is our democracy up to this task? And that is a really non-trivial question because...
I mean, it clearly isn't right now.
So far, we have not. We haven't been. And when you lose a national race, as we did in 2016, to a climate denier, that creates a real concern.
Is our democracy up to the task? If you're even asking that question, you're missing the point, because democracy is the point. But damn democracy, says the left, it's standing in the way of us getting control of every detail of your life. We'll have to do something about that. That is their position. In the meantime, though, the left has a backup plan. It's the same as it always has been, propaganda. Another demand of the Youth Climate Strike group is what they're calling, quote, comprehensive climate change education. They want it for children aged 5 to 14. 5 years old? Why so young? Well, because, and again, we're quoting here, impressionability is high during that developmental stage, end quote. In other words, brainwashing is easier when they're little.
Yes, they want to damage more kids. Yes, folks, this climate change hoax is nothing less than a power grab, and the left simply don't care. They don't care about how many children they abuse, so long as they achieve their goal.